Hello and welcome to our second lesson on percentages. Last time we were looking at percentages and we were finding the percentage of an amount. We had a question like this. Paul answered 21 maths test questions correctly in the 49 question test. What percentage of the questions did he get right? So we decided that the part in this case were the 21 questions that he answered correctly. The whole, well, there were 49 questions in the test, and we needed to find out the percentage. So we had the two things, we had the part and the whole, and we were going to find out the percentage. In this lesson though, we're going to find the value of a percentage. Here's a typical question where we'll need to do that. Paul scored 42% on his maths test. There were 49 questions. How many questions did he get right? As usual, let's find the maths in this question. Okay, now do we have the part? I don't see the part there. Do we have the whole? Well, the whole again is 49 questions, and he scored 42%. So we have the whole and the percentage. This time we're looking for the part. Okay, that's how many questions did he get right. That's the part. Now previously, to find the percentage of an amount, we used this formula. So we took the part, we divided it by the whole, and then we multiplied it by 100. And we found out that our percentage ended up at 42%. Now to work out this sort of problem, where we've got the percentage, we've got the whole, and we need to find out is the part. We're going to use this formula back to front, if you like. So we're going to start, we've got our percentage, so let's start with our percentage. We're going to do the opposite. So we're going to take our percentage, 42%, there it is. Then instead of multiplying it by 100 like we did up here in this formula, we're going to divide it by 100. Instead of dividing it by the whole, we're going to times it by the whole. So we're doing the complete opposite, if you like. We're undoing that sum at the top to arrive at the part, okay, which is how many questions did he get right. So we'll take our 42%, we'll divide it by 100. So let's start. We'll take our 42% and we'll divide it by 100. Now a very good way of doing this is using our place value chart. Here's our place value chart. And here's our 42, 4 tens and 2 units. And we're going to divide it by 100. Well, if we divide something by 100, the numbers are going to get smaller. And if they get smaller, they're going to go over to the right, over to the part numbers, the tenths, the hundredths, and if I had them, there'd be the thousands over here. So we need to move our numbers 2 places because we're dividing it by 100. So at the moment we've got 4 tenths. And if we moved it 1 place, if we were dividing it by 10, we'd have 4 units. But because we're dividing it by 100, we need to move it 2 spots. So instead of being 4 tens, it now becomes 4 tenths. And we do the same thing with the 2 units. Move it 1 spot, it would be 2 tenths. Move it 2 spots, it's 2 hundredths. So 42 divided by 100 equals 0.42. Okay, so we've worked out that 42 divided by 100 gives us 0.42. So we're at this stage now. Here's my 0.42. 0.42 times 49. That's the next thing we need to work out. Now there are 2 ways I've done this down here. The first way is using a long multiplication. The second way I've done mentally. I've just written this out and I'll explain that in a minute how I've done that mentally. Let's look at this long multiplication first. You can see I've put the decimal point over here to represent the 0.42, but when it comes to working out this long multiplication, I'm going to forget that decimal point for now. And then I'll put it back when I've got an answer. Okay, so I've worked out this long multiplication, and as you can see, I've remembered my red hot 0. Now 42 times 49 equals 2058. And here's where I need to put my decimal point back. Now this is 0.42, so there are two numbers after the decimal point. So I need to make sure that in my answer I place the decimal point back so that there are two numbers after the decimal point. So the answer is 20.58. Now, as you can see, I've solved this problem of 0.42 times 49 using a long multiplication, but I also could have used this mental calculation to do it, and I'll explain it for you now what I've done. So at the moment I've forgotten the decimal point, so it's instead of it being 0.42 I'm treating it as 42. So 42 times 49. Well, 42 times 49 is, well, I'm going to call it 42 times 50. But I remember that I've added one extra 42. And as you can see at the end of my equation, I'm ready to take that extra 42 off the answer at the end. So if it was 42 times 50, then I can pretend it's 42 times 100, which in my head is a much easier sum to do. So 42 times 100, I simply need to put those two zeros on the back of the 42, which makes it 4,200. And then, well, I've been dealing in 100, and, you know, 50 is closer to what I wanted, so I've got twice the amount, if you like, in my answer. So I'll need to either halve it or divide it by 2. So if I've got 4,200 and I divide it by 2, that leaves me with 2,100. And then, as I said, I'll need to take that 42 away, won't I? Because I've been dealing with, I've been pretending it's 42 times 50 instead of the real sum, which is 42 times 49. So I'll take that 42 off, and that leaves me with 2058. And just as I did over here in the long multiplication, I need to remember that there were two numbers after the decimal point, because it was 0.42 I was dealing with. So I need to make sure that in my answer, my decimal point, and I'll borrow one from up here, I need to remember that my decimal point will need to go in just there to make the answer 20.58. So whether you choose to use a long multiplication or whether you do it mentally, either way you'll end up with an answer like this, 20.58. Now at this stage I could leave that as a final answer, but in this particular question it doesn't make any sense, because we're asked how many questions did he get right. Well, you can't get 20.58 questions right, can you? So because it's 20.58, really we can round that up to 21. So to answer our question, if Paul scored 42% on his maths test and there were 49 questions, he must have got 21 questions right. Okay, just to recap then, if you're trying to find the value of a percentage, such as in this question, where there is a 23% discount on the iPod that normally sells for $320, and you're trying to work out, well, what is 23% of $320? What does that actually mean in dollars? Then you divide the percentage by 100 and multiply it with the whole. Good luck with your questions.